Hello, you're watching the Hub Online Network. Hello, my name is Gareth.
I am Jessica, your host for today.
This is Vicky Trill.
This is the Ash Creek News. We have a very titillating show for you today. Thank you so much for watching. We got another full show for you guys today, so let's get to it. Am I actually talking? You didn't give me the first finger point. No, don't stop it. This is fun. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our 40th episode of the Ash Creek News. As the intro said, my name is Gareth. Thank you for watching. We have local celebrity, journalist extraordinaire, mayor savant, Barbara Roden in studio today. Hello, Barbara. How are you?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
I am excellent. Thank you for asking.
Good.
So what's new and exciting in your world?
New and exciting. Well, it's the 40th anniversary, the 40th episode of the Hub Online Network News, so that's great. I think that it's a great service. I know lots of people watch it. Lots of people enjoy it. Thank you for giving a shout out to my son on Tuesday for his birthday. He really appreciated that. I said, "Gone but not forgotten." So that's really nice. I think people enjoy that.
Well, we were not scrambling for a name, but someone said it's Tim Roden's birthday, and I'm like, boom, it's in the show.
There you go.
So, anyway, so we have a lot of stuff to get through today. We're actually catching up for Tuesday's show because we didn't really have time to come up with a show for that day, so we're kind of doubling down on stuff to talk about. Okay. Some of the main topics we're talking about today are Ashcroft Council, Cache Creek Council meetings, and the possibility of upcoming elections. Now, those are not set in stone yet, but it feels like it, for both of those, are looming things. But we're going to start off the show, actually, by talking about the Terry Fox Run. This is the T-shirt for the Terry Fox Run. If you haven't gotten yours, you can come into the Ashcroft HUB and get your T-shirt. Barbara was saying earlier that she was going to purchase hers on her way out of the building today. I believe that they're $15 or $20. They're $20 at the Hub. So make sure that you come on in. Don't forget, Terry Fox Run is on September 20th. And let us know if take some pictures of you doing the Terry Fox Run and send them in to the Hub Online Network at HON@ashcrofthub.com. We would love to see how you did yours, what you did for yours. And, so keep us in the loop. Are you going to do the Terry Fox Run?
I'm not sure if I might do it this year because it's not a fixed run, and it's the 40th anniversary of the Terry Fox Run, and I remember watching the TV news back when Terry had to stop his run, and I remember there was a telethon on, I think, CTV, and Terry's goal had been to raise $1 through his Marathon of Hope for every Canadian, which is 26 million at that time in 1980. And I remember when they did the telethon, and they raised way more than they anticipated, and just the genuine outpouring of emotion when Terry announced he had to stop his run. And I think it's extraordinary now. When I lived in England, there was a Terry Fox Run in London, organized by the Canadian High Commission in London, and that was a big thing in one of the parks in central London. So it's all over the world. I think they've raised more than $750 million. And Terry wanted to raise $26 million. So it's just an amazing thing. Terry Fox is a national icon and a hero, and get out and do something. You can do it in your own backyard. Just walk a few times around your backyard. That's the Terry Fox Run this year.
Well, actually, this all being said, we do have a short video of the Terry Fox information, so let's play that. All right, so since my foot is still messed up from my previous walkathon, I will not be participating in a walk or run for the Terry Fox Run, but I will try and do something else instead. Maybe something like remember the ALS challenge, where you dump the bucket of ice water over your head?
Yes, I remember that.
Maybe I'll try and do something like that in in respect and in an attempt to be a part of. But let's move on to what happened at the Ashcroft Council meeting. Now, I'm just going to give a little bit of a recap here, and then we will chat about it. So, oh, and you can jump in at any time, Barbara, and just say, I want to talk about that right now. Okay?
All right.
So, the Ashcroft Council had 3 delegations to start things off, one by Vicky Trill talking about the Ashcroft HUB and asking for a letter of support for new grant opportunities coming in the future. Martina Duncan was there on behalf of St.Albans Soups on Ministry, asking for the maximum amount of $500 in grant and aid, which was approved later in the meeting. And Santo Talaricos stood in on behalf of the Landuche family, who are in the midst of setting up a property on Government Street and the Ashcroft housing, or for Ashcroft housing. Now that's correct, right? They're trying to build homes.
That's right. There's a property immediately across from the ambulance station on Government Street, the corner of Government and Elm, and it's been subdivided into 8 lots, and they would like to build 8 residences on those properties.
So he was asking for certain fees, and again, stop me because my understanding of this might be not correct, and I would like to make sure I'm not saying anything wrong. Where was I? He was asking for certain fees to be waived and to have a culvert and drainage study be done as quickly as possible. The village, Ashcroft Village, took a stance of the village will have the study done with the aid of a grant. And if that grant doesn't cover the full cost of the study, the remaining amount would be spread out amongst all of the appropriate parties.
Right.
Appropriate parties being there are 2 other lots that are possibly up for subdivision.
The one other major lot is the former rodeo grounds. That's what everyone knows it as. And the thing is, under the community charter, local governments cannot subsidize or give monetary incentives to developers because that sets a dangerous precedent. What has been identified in Ashcroft is that over the last few years, of course, we have, because of climate change, we are seeing different patterns of rain, and we're seeing different patterns of runoff. The Elephant Hill Wildfire, of course, in 2017 stripped a lot of vegetation off the hillsides and mountainsides around us. The soil isn't absorbing water the way it used to, so when you get these big rainfall events now, which are becoming, or seem to be becoming more common, you get a lot more runoff of debris and mud and rocks, etc. And of course, it comes down over 97C and down Government Street, and right where it looks like 2 housing developments could potentially go in. And so it's pretty important to now do a study on drainage and storm systems, etc., to decide what is going to be sufficient to cope with these events when they do happen.
Right. Where was I here? To cover the full cost of the study, the remaining amount would be spread amongst the appropriate parties. The village took Mr. Talaricos' suggestions under advisement and said that they would be talking about it during the new business portion of the meeting. Ultimately, the village said that they will follow the rules and guidelines of the study and will ask for a time frame and ask if the time frame could be pushed up, but stood firm on the dispersal of still owed funds. Other topics of discussion included signage, and was there anything else that stood out to you?
The signage one is a big one. Just trying to, not standardize the signs, but just make sure that you don't get anything that's large or offensive or it's disturbing to neighbors. And also make sure that the businesses that are downtown particularly do benefit from signage, because you do want people to know what services and amenities are available in a community. And so signs obviously are a big way to do that. So it's a question of how do you do signs that aren't obscuring sight lines for drivers particularly, that aren't sort of great big billboards that take away from the area, from aesthetics. And satisfying the needs of business owners. So it's gone to first and second reading, and now it's going to be circulated to the downtown businesses and public who wants to see it for input and guidance. Are we on the right track here? Is there something that hasn't been covered? Is there something that needs to be covered more fully? Or is there something you want to see taken out? So that discussion is now going to be ongoing until the end of October, when our next council meeting is.
One of the things that you guys haven't talked about for a short while has been emergency preparedness signage. You guys were talking about getting a changeable sign an electric sign of some kind. Is there any more movement on the possibility of that?
That wasn't identified in a survey that went out to the community, a sort of portable signboard that had, you could put the letters on, or it could be electronic to give a message. That was not suggested as a priority by the majority of people who filled out the survey and returned it as a communication method. So it's still on the table. It could still come into play depending on circumstances. But right now, I mean, for example, we've set up a Village of Ashcroft Facebook page in the last few months, which we never had before. And I'm hearing from people that they are looking at it, they are taking notice, they are seeing it. So, that's something that we have instituted now to try and get messages out, whether it's just generic things like the water conservation poster contest, which is open till September 30th, or if it's an emergency message that people need to be aware of, that, we're going to stage 4 water conservation because they're doing something with the water, anything in between.
Well, we here for the Ash Creek News actually use that Facebook page every show, so thank you, Amy O'Rourke, for setting that up. Yep. Once again, another shout out to your guys' paid intern.
Yes, Amy.
So congratulations on that. And also the Twitter page. We look at both of those to see if anything's ever different.
Great.
So we can use that. And I don't know if you caught it, but last week we went through your guys' water conservation kit.
Yes, I saw that. Yes. And I still have, every time I get home, my husband says, have you picked up one of those kits yet? No, I forgot. So I do have to remember to pick one up because I want one of those nose nozzles. There we go.
A nose nozzle, eh?
I knew I'd get there eventually.
You want low flow, huh?
I want low flow hoses. Whoa, don't say that 5 times fast.
So moving away from, was there anything else that stood out to you from the council meeting that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that was it. The sign bylaw was the big one.
I'm trying to think of the other group that got approved for the maximum amount of $500.
Sage Sound Singers.
Yes, thank you. Sage Sound Singers, congratulations on your grant in aid. So that is pretty awesome.
That's they're going to do their Christmas concert again this year. It's going to be very different from the past. And they didn't do one last year because they did their Tribute to Fiddler on the Roof concert in the fall of last year. And, these things are, I took part in one of their musical nights, and that was the Tribute to Broadway. And it is just a massive amount of work to put one of those concerts together. And so I can totally understand why, having done Fiddler on the Roof and, for months just focused on that, now you've got a 2-month window to do a Christmas concert. There's just no way they could do that. So I really missed it last year, and I'm really happy that they're able to come back and do it this year in a different format, but it's going to be a Christmas concert. That's how I'll know it's Christmas.
I'm actually thinking that the Sage Sound Singers have contacted us to help them with that. So
Great.
Check that out on the Hub Online Network during Christmas.
Great.
Now, members of the Ashcroft and District's Lions Club are all smiles as they once again are taking part in the Tim Hortons Smile Cookies campaign at the SO Travel Center. Now through Sunday, Smile Cookies are available for $1 each, and 100% of the funds raised are staying in the community to help local causes. They even do deliveries to local businesses. I stole that from the Ashcroft Cache Creek Journal, just as an FYI. And we have a clip from an interview that we did with Sue Peters yesterday. We're going to play that now.
The Ashcroft and District Lions Club have been lucky enough to partner with Tim Hortons during the Smile Cookie campaign. $1, the cookies cost $1. They're really cute, and each one of those dollars comes directly to the Lions Club for whatever they choose as their project for the year that it's in. We support a number of entities within the community. Lions Clubs are mandated by Lions Club International that all funds raised within the community must be used within the community or to benefit the community. The Christmas Hampers group, the Food Bank and the Equality Project are really struggling this year because donations are down, of course, because of people being out of work. They're limited now for what they can take in donations because of COVID restrictions. And so they're all financially not getting what they normally do. So those are the three entities we've chosen to support this year. So it will be the food bank, or EFRI and the food bank in Ashcroft, the Equality Project, who provides hot lunches 3 times a week and take-home meals, and community contact, social contact, which a lot of people live by themselves and don't have that. And so they have what they call their clubhouse, and people go have their lunch, visit with other people, COVID safely. Right now, they limit the number of people in. And then the Christmas hamper, who, I can't remember, it's CRS, I can't remember what that stands for, but Esther Lang is the president of that. So those are the groups we've chosen to support this time. Well, I was speaking with Damien yesterday about that, and he ordered 4,900 cookies.
Wow.
And the fellow from Tim Hortons that he was dealing with asked him if he was serious, and Damien said yes. And so they have a bet. And so Damien has to eat the cookies that are left over. So please, we don't want Damien to get fat, so come and buy cookies.
Give us something. So I have to say, I really enjoy Sue's enthusiasm when she talks about A, the lions, and B, the smile cookies.
Yeah.
Now you have been stuffing your face with smile cookies.
Just wipe the crumbs off, hang a sec. Yes, I went up and bought some smile cookies for the village crew and village staff, and I might have bought a few for myself. I won't tell, but they are delicious.
They actually are deceptively good.
They are very good, and I understand that if you eat one standing up, there are 0 calories. So I've been told.
Wow.
So there you go.
All right. Now, we were privy to, I forget if she said this in the actual interview, that there's a bet going on with Damien. Oh, it was in the thing? I want to, so apparently, I don't know if you know this, apparently there is a bet between Damien and the suppliers of the cookies, because they ordered 4,900,
Right.
and the supplier doesn't think that they could sell 4,900. So he told Damien that if you don't sell the 4,900, whatever you don't sell, you have to eat. My thing is that the supplier should have said, or if you do sell 4,900 cookies, Tim Hortons will match the amount. That would have been a bet, opposed to, but if Damien doesn't win, I hope that we can maybe get it on camera, him eating the remainder.
Well, last year they sold, well, I mean, you do the math, it's $1 cookie, and last year the Lions sold, they made $6,100
Wow.
for the different causes that they were going for. In fact, they had so much money that they were not only to fulfill their original cause, but then put money aside for a new set of hearing aids for the young man who they'd bought hearing aids for, and make a $2,100 donation to Sea Cadets, which he's part of. So, you know, last year they sold 6,100, so 4,900 is doable.
Awesome. Well, we hope that the Lions are able to fulfill that, and we support you. That's awesome stuff, you guys. Now, unfortunately, Dr. Stephen Akakumi has left the Ashcroft family medical practice. Now, I know that he has been struggling to get a foothold in the area. I didn't know to what extent he wasn't succeeding. I thought he was going to other places, such as Clinton and Lillooet, to sort of supplement his patient income. And personally, I think it's a shame to see him go, especially since we only have 2 doctors left in our catchment area. Do you have any other insights to this particular story?
Just basically, from what I understand, it is purely down to patient load. Doctors, physicians have a panel, which is the number of patients who are attached to them. And in order to really be viable in any community, they have to reach a certain number of patients who are attached to them. And Dr. Akinkunmi, through no fault of his own, his first day at the medical clinic was March 16th. Which was the week that everything basically in the province shut down. And the medical clinic, I think, was very, very good at immediately being able to transition to a telehealth model where you either phoned a doctor or you could do it via video conferencing. And if those weren't options, I understand you could go in and see a physician. But here he is trying to establish a patient base and get himself known just as everything closes. So I think that was really unfortunate, no one's fault, and he has struggled since then, because I'm hearing from a lot of people that they, even if they need to go to see a doctor, they're really hesitant to go into a medical clinic Because of the COVID-19 worries, a lot of the people who need to go see doctors are compromised in some way. They have underlying health issues. So he really has struggled. It's a huge shame. I think that people really need to sign up when a new doctor comes to the community, to sign up with that new doctor, him or her, and show their support and their confidence. Otherwise, we are really going to struggle to get new doctors here.
So now that fall's coming up, sort of flu and cold season is on its way. Do you think that people are going to just stay at home with the flu or cold, or are you thinking that they might be, I guess, less inclined to go see the doctor and just sort of suffer through it on their own, or what?
You know, this is just one of the big unknowns about the COVID-19. I mean, I've seen lots of articles about what's the difference between the symptoms for COVID-19 and the flu, and you really have to get down to the fine print to see what the differences are. There aren't a lot of really significant differences in a lot of cases, so a lot of people will get probably the flu or a cold and not know whether it's the coronavirus. On the other side of that, you're probably going to get people who are getting the coronavirus who think, oh, it's just a really bad cold. Because in some people, the symptoms are, and the effects are those of a heavy flu or cold. So it's really going to be a challenge, I think, to navigate through this next few weeks, especially with school having gone back. I mean, I know when my son was in school, you could set your clock by within a week or two of the kids going back to school, everyone in the house would have sniffles and a sore throat because the kids are all mixing and introducing all these wild and wonderful germs to each other and then bringing them home to share, because we do teach our kids to share, so they do. And now, of course, there's rules in schools around if your child has the sniffles or a sore throat, they have to stay home or get a test. And yeah, it's how this all plays out, what it looks like is going to be interesting and not in a good sense.
You're sort of jumping the shark on later on in the show here, but talking about schools and sore throats and that kind of thing, the Government of Canada CDC it has a website now where you can go and see if there's any cases in certain schools. Mm-hmm. And so there's a list of schools on the island, and there's a list of schools in Fraser Health. There isn't one for the Interior or Vancouver yet, or Northern Health. Mm-hmm. But there are potential cases in 6 schools in Fraser Health currently. Mm-hmm. And I know that in other provinces there's lots of linked cases and things on the rise in those places as well. So it'll be interesting to see positive cases for COVID-19 if that is the case.
Yeah, I understand that the other 3 health authorities are rolling out their school thing I think it's supposed to be this week. So, and the reasoning I saw for that is because news travels fast in the school community. If people hear that a school has had a student or a teacher or a staff member who they think has coronavirus, that it just spreads like wildfire. So what the health authorities are trying to do is they hope that by saying, yes, there is a confirmed case of coronavirus at X school, without pointing a finger and saying it's this student or it's this teacher or it's this STA, that they will be able to alert parents to what is happening. And they have said that it won't necessarily affect the entire school. If they've identified the student, then all the people in that student's, bubble or cohort will be contacted.
Right.
So it's not going to mean the whole school gets shut down. And again, it's just how is this going to work? It sounds like a great idea, and it sounds like it might help to allay people's fears, but if you start getting lots of cases at a given school, if there's a cluster or an outbreak, that could overwhelm the system that's in place.
We're going to talk more about the coronavirus a little bit later on, but we're going to move into what's going on in Cache Creek. So currently, wildfire protection kits are made up. And they're made up of fabric hoses and sprinklers that can be mounted to fences or walls or placed in eaves, troughs, to help protect your home in the event of a wildfire. If you're interested in purchasing one of these kits, please contact the Cache Creek Fire Department. The Cache Creek Volunteer Fire Department held a barbecue on Sunday afternoon to show appreciation for the hard work of their members and to wish the best of luck to members Dale Fitzgerald and Ed Gadinsky for their dedicated years of service as they both move away from Cache Creek. So thank you for your service and time in that area. And the Cache Creek Council. So some of the main topics that were discussed at the Cache Creek Council involved a housing study put forward by Macola,
I think.
Development showing off certain interesting stats in regards to housing in Cache Creek. These numbers are from no later than 2016, however. Some of those numbers are that the population in Cache Creek has consistently dropped over time, and that the biggest portion of the population is between the ages of 25 to 64. 21% of the residents rent houses instead of own, and on average, 20% of each age group in Cache Creek sits on the low income line. And of that number, most of the people are renters. Another major topic was the BC Interior Community Foundation. Some new tidbits have been found about this, such as that there is a guaranteed 3.5% interest rate on the amount of money. So even at its worst, it will still be earning the village $3,500 a year, but NDIT does get 1% of that, so the village will be getting about $2,500 a year for sure. However, there is room for a better interest rate as these things do fluctuate, so there could be a better year, but never a worse year. Then we came on to a most interesting topic that has been boiling over for quite some time. This is, of course, involving Councillor Annette Pittman versus seemingly the rest of council, CFO, and the mayor. We are actually going to show this clip because we feel that context is important, and we will add some commentary after, although Barbara will recuse herself from this particular topic.
Item 3, a tax reminder letter. Councillor Pittman to supply us with her copy that states that it's different from any of the others.
Okay, so the issue on this whole situation was on a phone call.
Oh,
No,
we are
because I
sticking
waited.
tax reminder. Let's see the tax reminder letter. This is what we're dealing with right now. The one that stipulates is different than that was sent out to anybody else. So that's what we're talking about right now.
I wasn't given the opportunity to speak the first time around, and that's why I'm speaking now.
It's on tape that you did speak, and actually,
And
you
so,
did call
so
our
forward,
CFO a liar.
so far, yes, I did, because that was in regards to the phone call and how the conduct of the phone call.
Right.
Yeah,
And
you have
that's
used
why-
a very colorful
that's
language that
why-
is unacceptable, even if you're
That
just a
is
taxpayer.
why
The question from me was
my issue was.
that you are to produce the letter that states
I did,
that
right
you've
here.
got something different than all the other taxpayers received that had a tax reminder notice.
That's,
So if you could produce that, that'll
it's
get us
right
to
here.
Oh, okay.
And it not anywhere on here does it say that it's a friendly reminder that your taxes are
Is
due
it different
until
from
September the
anybody
30th.
else that got the letter?
May I see it?
When this is the letters that I received.
That's what I'm asking you. Is it different than all the rest? And you had a copy of that
Yours-
letter the last
your-
meeting.
At that meeting, it stated that the outstanding taxes, it was just a friendly reminder that your taxes are due on or before
Yep.
September 30th. That's not what the letter, my letter states.
The first line of your letter says, please
It
note
says a
that this letter
reminder.
serves as a reminder.
But it doesn't state on there about it being due on September 30th.
It's just reminding
2020.
you that your
It's a
taxes
reminder.
are due.
No, it reminds that the taxes are outstanding.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the exact same letter that
So
everyone else got.
the taxes aren't outstanding until October the 1st.
No, the taxes
Outstanding
are
means they
outstanding
haven't been
since
paid.
they have been issued.
Right.
Overdue means they are overdue, which is not the case.
Outstanding just means that they are due to be paid. by the deadline.
So if you could produce
The
a letter that's
issue-
different than
the
anybody
issue-
else got.
was that when it was brought forward under new business, it was an issue that the CFO had an issue that was bothering her, that Councillor Pittman had called insulting, demeaning, condescending, out of line, not acceptable, and will hang up.
That's exactly what
Now,
the phone call was.
And you also added in there that your command of English language doesn't have the understanding between outstanding and arrears.
We're gonna
That's
call
Now,
exactly
then,
it.
where is
Just-
it condescending and insulting?
1 second. You were produced the letter that states that that letter was different than anybody else in the community got. Now, can you provide that letter?
The
What
issue-
don't you understand?
The issue was not the letter. The letter was irrelevant.
Look it.
It was about the phone
Look it.
call. And that,
I
you
specifically
haven't
asked
given
you.
me, you haven't
you
given me the opportunity
Okay, I'm
to
gonna give
clear
you
that.
2
And
minutes.
now I have
Give me-
cleared that.
Give me the
So
two,
that
you
is
have
it.
2 minutes to clear it. Produce that letter.
Why-
That you
It's
said
not
that
a-
Christina
it's not-
gave you that was different than anybody's else. Give us the proof.
During that time,
Referring to page 3, new business, item B, August 17th, 2020, adopted council minutes. The minutes reflect discussions between Councillor Pittman and CFO Martini regarding the mailed out property tax notice reminder. It's disturbing and frankly unacceptable for a councillor to degrade, humiliate, and insinuate CFO Martini is a
and
liar.
also,
I've expressed to this
And
council how
also-
inadequate code of conduct can be and how the lack of quick and decisive action that requires in some cases is non-existent. As such, as mayor, I'm rescinding Councillor Pittman's acting mayor appointment from the term of December 2020 through December 2021.
you were going to do that
CFO
anyway.
Martini, this council is painfully aware of the challenges you and the finance committee face in our community. Expressing our gratitude on behalf of the citizens of which you serve for your efforts is in deciphering years of financial records and putting the integrity of our municipality at a level which hasn't been reached in many years is underestimated. So for that, we thank you.
Thank you.
And
And I want to
I'm not
make
gonna
it clear
apologize for this
that
person's
that
behavior.
I spoke to
Carry on.
the CFO as a business owner and a taxpayer of Cache Creek.
Policy
I
and
was
bylaw
not
review.
representing as Cache Creek as a councillor when
Mayor
that phone
Talarico
call.
and Councillor
It was
Peters.
very
Asked,
unprofessional of
asked
you.
and answered, move on.
You're a disgrace.
You are. And that's why you're,
That's right, I understand exactly. That's why you can't produce a letter.
it wasn't about the
Designated
letter, it
Mayor
was
Talarico.
irrelevant
It
about the
was.
letter.
You
The
said you
letter-
It's
received.
right
It was
on the
an
minutes.
issue.
You
that-
said that your
new
letter did
business
not say
came
it was
up,
a
And
reminder.
it was an issue that was bothering her. That was the phone call. And that is what I was calling.
Yes, the
When you asked if I was.
Asked and
again,
answered. I'd like
Once
to call a
again, I'm
point
going
of
to
order.
say-
This has been asked and answered. We need to move on.
Designated spokesperson for Canada's legislation.
So this all comes off the heels of a letter that was sent to private businesswoman Annette Pittman. Now, of course, Annette doubles as a person who sits on council. For context, I'm going to read the letter that they are talking about, and it says, "Dear taxpayer, please know that this letter serves as a reminder that the property taxes in the amount of X, as shown below, remain unpaid. As of January 1st, 2020, interest will also, or 2021, sorry, interest rates will also begin to accrue on the 2020 amount unpaid. For the exact payout of the outstanding taxes, with interest calculated to the date of payment, please contact the village office at their phone number. If you do not have the ability to pay the current portion in full, please contact the village office to set up a payment plan." So, that is the letter. Now, at the August 17th, 2020 council meeting under new business, CFO Martini expressed her frustration over a phone call she received from Ms. Pittman regarding letters that were sent out to all businesses in Cache Creek which had not yet paid their 2020 property taxes due by September 30th. The letters showed the outstanding balance of taxes owed and were meant as reminders They were sent because COVID-19 has resulted in an extension of the date when taxes are normally due. Martina described the phone call as very rude, which Pittman disputes. Pittman, who has personal interests in more than one Cache Creek business, said that she was calling as a business owner and taxpayer, not as a counselor. You were, quote, "You were very rude as a taxpayer and did not understand the difference between outstanding and overdue," replied Martini. Pittman noted that she had been very upset and seemed to be claiming that the letter she had sent had seen differed from what other businesses had received. Martini said this was not the case and asked if Pittman was calling her a liar, to which the answer was yes. Talarico asked Pittman to bring in the letter she had received and ended the exchange by commending Martini for sending out the reminder letters to everyone. We're very sorry for and we're very appreciative of your efforts as CFO and employee. Now, this last little bit I had read out from the Ashcroft Cache Creek Journal, and the Journal later confirmed that there are some $120,000 in property taxes from both businesses and residential that is still outstanding in Cache Creek for the 2020 tax year. But for businesses, the taxes are not, there has been an extension to the end of September. The letter produced at the September 14th meeting was in fact the same letter that everyone else received. We here at the Hub Online Network took the letter and polled several people asking if they would have been offended by the letter in question. The reaction was split, with people even saying that the CFO can make the letter sound as passive or aggressive as they want. We polled people about the usage of the word outstanding in regards to monies owed as property taxes. Technically, the word is used by accountants to indicate any bill that has been sent but hasn't been paid. Most people that we polled are not accountants, though, and this terminology they thought meant past due, especially when the letter does not specify a due date and the money was and is not due until the end of September. The letter was sent out on August 5th. We also polled people asking if they felt that this type of behavior was appropriate for a council meeting, which an overwhelming majority said no. The village's own criteria for in-camera sessions states, a part of council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is one or more of the following. Personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. Since CFO Martini is an employee of the village, this matter included her conduct as well. The statement for a closed session should apply. At this point, due to conduct, Councillor Pittman has been removed from all appointed committees and now has also lost her upcoming appointment as Deputy Mayor from December 2020 to December 2021. Now, another thing is the NDIT Foundation, just for a little bit more clarity as to what I was talking about. So the community itself is trying to NDIT has a grant that will match up to $50,000 to the community, but the $50,000 or $100,000, once both parties have put their money in, goes into an account that will accrue the 3.5% interest that can be paid out to charitable organizations within the community. So that is what I'm talking about, is that specific amount of money that goes into a thing for a foundation to be created in Cache Creek that could pay out that $2,500 to charitable organizations. So that's what I'm going to say about the Cache Creek Council meeting for now, and we'll go from there. Now, in the rest of the interior, the BC Interior can expect a smoky sky through the work week, but Environment Canada says relief is on its way. Forecaster Doug Lundquist says smoke will be in the air for the next couple of days, but a change in the weather pattern should give us a clear air weekend. Yeah. Now, looking outside the window, it's still looking pretty smoky. Barbara, what do you think?
Pretty smoky. I was talking to my son in Prince George. It's reached up there. He's actually taking flying lessons to get his private pilot's license, and so he's sort of always constantly monitoring the air and smoke conditions up there to see whether he can actually go flying that day. And so it's reached as far north as Prince George, probably further than that. I don't even think we're getting it as badly as they are down on the coast and in the lower mainland. So I think for a lot of people it's a really challenging flashback to 2017 and 2018 when we had terrible smoky skies in the province, and lots of health warnings obviously about staying inside. There has been some talk that the masks that people are wearing for COVID-19 could be helping a little bit, could be, but there's still lots of advisories that if you have underlying health conditions, COPD, heart conditions, etc., stay inside, keep your doors and windows closed.
Did you hear about that New West pier fire?
Yes, I did. I mean, I think as of yesterday, it was still smoldering. So obviously, pretty big, pretty stubborn, major fire that firefighters are obviously having trouble getting under complete control. I mean, huge blow to the city of New Westminster.
Well, it just adds to the smoke as well.
Yeah.
The video of that fire was massive, and the plumes of smoke were gigantic. So I hope everybody that's dealing with that is staying safe. They kept using the term toxic material on the news thing that I watched about that. So please stay safe in New West. Now, the recently named Provincial Ndp Candidate. Okay, so now we're sort of getting into a little bit of
Local,
politics.
provincial politics, yeah.
So the recently named Provincial Ndp Candidate in the Fraser-Nicola riding is a familiar face with a different name from the last time he challenged for the NDP nomination. How do you say his last name?
Shumahetsa.
So Aaron Shumahetsa says he's prepared for a snap election. Quote, if I'm elected as MLA, I want to make a difference for people and families who live across the riding. And of course, I stole this from the Ashcroft Cache Creek Journal. So luckily we have Barbara in here to provide a little bit of context. Who is this guy? What's he doing?
Okay, well, you have to go way back into the mists of time, way back to 2016, when run up to the provincial election in 2017, and Harry Lally, who has been a long-time NDP MLA, he was transportation minister back in the 1990s under the NDP government, he announced that he was going to throw his hat in the ring to become the nominee for the NDP in Fraser-Nicola. So that was in May of 2016, and then months went by, and I understand that the NDP party was reaching out to various politicians in the area, asking them, would you like to stand as the nominee for NDP in Fraser-Nicola? So they were obviously looking for someone to run against Harry so that he would not get in by acclamation. And Harry, love him or hate him, tells it like it is. He's a great person to interview because he tends not to censor himself all that much. And so you get some really great interviews with Harry, but there was a feeling that the NDP party wanted someone else to challenge. And so in December of 2016, Aaron Shumahetsa, or Aaron Sam as he was then, entered the race. And so it was Harry and Aaron, and then there was a failure by the NDP to set a date for the nomination. And that kept dragging on into the new year. And then in January of 2017, 4 months before the election, the Premier, John Horgan, quite extraordinarily gave an interview in which he said publicly that he personally had asked Harry Lally to step aside so that Aaron Shumahetsa would get in by acclamation. And Harry, being Harry, said no, he was going to run and he was going to give the NDP party members in Fraser-Nicola the chance to have their say. And when they had their nomination meeting, Harry won quite handily, went on to be the NDP candidate in the 2017 election, and lost to Jackie Taggart by 524 votes. So now we fast forward to 2020, and Aaron Shumahetsa was announced as the acclaimed candidate or nominee for the NDP party last week. And this has led to all 13 members of the executive of the NDP Riding Association in Fraser-Nicola resigning en masse on the weekend because they say that the due process that the party has outlined was not followed. Aaron Shumahetsa, they say, was the only candidate who was vetted by the provincial party. And when the nomination date was set, under the party's rules, they were told you have to file at least 28 days before the nomination date. And when they came out and announced the nomination date, it was 22 days away. So obviously you can't bend time to make 28 days out of 22. So that effectively meant that Aaron Schumahetsa got in by acclamation, which has got really rankled with the riding association. So that's the lead up to what's happened. So the NDP do have a candidate, and Jackie Taggart has announced that she has every intention of being the Liberal candidate. And what's important about that is that Fraser-Nicola is seen as a swing riding. I mean, the NDP currently have the same number of seats as the Liberals. They're governing with a minority government. If they want to come back with a majority government whenever the next election is, Fraser-Nicola has to swing over to the win column for them, because they have to hold on to the seats they've got and then add 3, 4, 5 more. And because of the narrow margin of victory in 2017, they probably look at Fraser-Nicola as eminently winnable. So it's going to be interesting to see what that translates to in an election campaign. Are we going to get visits by the Premier? Are we going to get announcements about funding? Who knows?
Well, maybe we can get Premier John Horgan on the Hub Online Network. Premier John Horgan, if you're watching, what you doing? Get on our show. Now, is Harry Lowell, was he sort of waiting in the wings to re-be the candidate? Or
Not this time. I get the sense he was the president of the riding association, president or vice president. So I don't think that Harry was getting ready to throw his hat in the ring this time. I think that they were just hoping to actually have a challenged nomination so that there would be a variety of candidates for the members of the NDP and Fraser-Nicola to look at, 2 or 3 or 4 different candidates and say, this is the person we want, rather than having only one candidate who then gets in by acclamation and they've got, no vote because he was the only candidate.
is there room? So now that the 13 people have stepped down and the one person has won by acclamation, is there room for the 13 people to say, no, we don't agree with that, we're going to put this guy against you anyway?
No.
So it's done.
It's a done deal. What I've heard from the Riding Association executive is that they plan, there were some reports that they were going to work to undermine Mr. Schumahetsa, and I got some clarification that no, they weren't actively going to be working to undermine him, but they were not going to help, because usually it's the Riding Association who will do things for a candidate like help them fundraise, help them get organized for an election campaign. And so now they're saying we're not going to do that.
Right.
So Mr. Schumahetsa then will have to find that assistance from elsewhere.
On a normal election cycle, so let's just assume that an election would have happened in 2021, would they not have a candidate until this time next year, or are they planning, like really looking at a snap election that's happening in the next month?
It's hard to say. I know in the last election in 2017, Jackie Taggart, for example, was announced as the Liberal candidate for Fraser-Nicola in, I believe it was April or May of 2016. So a full year before the election was due to happen, she was named as the Liberal candidate. Simultaneously, in the last election, there were a number of ridings where the NDP were very late in naming a candidate. So even though everyone knew when the election was going to be, there were some ridings where the candidate was almost last minute. And that really hurts a candidate because they need that time, especially if you're a new candidate. If you're not a known quantity in a big riding like Fraser-Nicola, you need as much time as you can get to go knocking on doors, to establish your constituency offices, to get your campaign manager, to get your team assembled and out there knocking on doors for you, because of course one person can't knock on every door in Fraser-Nicola, to get your signs and get your brochures and get your leaflets and your lapel badges and whatever other things you do. The more time, the better, because it just gives you more time to organize and get your name out there, get your brand established. So it could be that the NDP is just trying to give Mr. Schumahetsa, I mean, the next election is scheduled by law for October 2021, so that would give him, 13 months. That's great. On the other hand, if an election does come soon, as in within the next couple of months, he's already named.
I've seen lots of different things talking about quote-unquote snap elections. So, for example, Jackie Taggart on her Facebook page says, with signs of an election being imminent and many changes taking place, I want to take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to my colleagues who have entrusted me to be their caucus chair for the last several years, a position was honored to be hold, et cetera, et cetera. But what I want to focus on is with the signs of an election being imminent. Do you see evidence of an election being imminent, and how would that help or hinder the current NDP government?
Okay, do you have a couple of hours here? 'Cause we're-
Is there a Cliff Notes?
I'll give you the too long didn't read version. Yes, there's lots of talk about the possibility of a snap election. As I said, the next provincial election is by law mandated to be held in October of 2021. The Premier can call an election when he feels he needs or wants to. There is a lot of talk that as early as next week, which is the end of the Union of BC Municipalities Conference, that he will, see, traditionally on the last day of UBCM, the Premier does a keynote address for about half an hour, talks to all the delegates. Sometimes, not always, the Premier makes a big announcement about some big new program or something nice and shiny or new funding or something. So, wow, what bigger way to end UBCM than by announcing, oh, by the way, we're all going to the polls in October. So there is speculation he might be wanting to do that. It's interesting to see that, lots of people are saying, well, holding an election during a pandemic. Well, they just did it in New Brunswick. The minority government, the Premier there, had a minority, went to the polls, and last week came out with a majority, which was obviously the outcome that the Premier was hoping for. So that's proven that a minority government can go to the polls in these times that we're in and come out with a majority, and also that you can safely, as far as we know, hold an election in a pandemic. So those are a couple of things that I'm sure the Premier has looked at very closely. One political pundit who I respect very greatly has put the chances of a snap election at 80%. So if you're a betting person, those are good odds. I'm not a betting person. So I think the chances are good we could see an election, and the NDP as they stand have another year to go in their mandate. Premier Horgan could be looking to call a snap election, gamble, roll the dice on getting a majority, and then getting another 4 years without having to worry about getting support from another party. They have the supply agreement right now. With the confidence and supply agreement with the Green Party, he wouldn't have to worry about that. He's got a straight majority.
As a journalist, do you like election seasons?
I love election seasons. I have been a provincial and federal election junkie for as long as I can remember, being able to watch the news and understand what was going on. In fact, one of my first memories of it is my mom said to me, I was very young, and she said to me, we're going to go, and I thought she said we're going to go boating. So I was really excited. I was only about 5 or 6. And we went to Canby High School. I was living in Richmond at the time. Canby High School, now long gone. And we parked in front of the school. And even as young as I was, I thought, boating, this is weird. And then I thought maybe it was like the PNE where they have those rides where you get in, it's the circle full of water and you get in the little boat and it goes around. And so I was still excited and we went in. And what she had actually said was we're going to go voting today. So that was my introduction to the electoral process, and it was a huge, crushing disappointment. But ever since then, I've been fascinated by elections. So I probably analyze these things way more than is healthy. So the idea I've been sort of in my head, the pros and cons of calling a snap election here in BC. It could turn out with a majority government for the NDP. It could all go horribly pear-shaped. That's the wonderful thing about provincial politics in the crazy left coast.
Well, now, the other interesting thing that's going on is, so that's provincially. Mm-hmm. Federally, we're looking at the possibility of a similar situation. Although this would be a vote of no confidence put forth by the Conservatives, the Bloc Québécois, and maybe even the NDP, although it looks like they're a little bit more hesitant to call this forward. And of course, this would take place after the 23rd, after the throne speech. Would you be elated if there was a federal and provincial election in the same time, same year?
You know, I think if someone is going to call or try to force an election ahead of schedule, whether it's a prime minister or a premier saying we're going to the polls, or whether it's the opposition trying to force a vote of no confidence, one of the things as a voter I ask myself is this really necessary? I mean, during World War II with petrol rationing in the UK, they had signs up, is your journey really necessary? Like, do you really need to get in your car and make this journey, or can you save petrol for the war effort? So, you know, is this election really necessary? What are the justifications? Because, I mean, in the Premier's case here in BC, it would be to win a majority, but he's not going to come out and say that. I want to get more power for a longer period of time. So he's going to talk about whatever he talks about, you know, seeing the COVID-19 recovery through, overseeing us through these difficult times, stability, etc. Federally, it's interesting that it is going to, if an election is forced, it will probably be because of a no confidence vote from the other parties, because the other parties have no money. I don't think the Liberals necessarily have a ton of money, but they've probably got more than the Conservatives, the NDP, the Green, and the Bloc, because changes to campaign financing have hit the parties. Plus, of course, the more popular a party is, the more money you tend to get. And after the most recent federal election, which was in October of last year, so less than a year away, the cupboard is bare. So how exactly they're going to fight an election, I don't know. But perhaps they feel that with the WE scandal, which I know has been covered here a lot, perhaps they feel that the time is right, and that Mr. Trudeau, who I think is seen as, you know, being a bit Teflon coated, maybe there are some cracks showing. But no, I'd want to hear their justification, and asking British Columbians to go to the polls during a pandemic is one thing. That's what, 4.5 million people. Asking, well, 4.5 million people altogether, not all of them are voters. You know, asking 28, 30 million people across Canada to go to the polls in a pandemic, that's a whole different kettle of fish. So I think that politicians of all stripes have to be really careful right now, because it's a very challenging, delicate time. And especially if BC goes to the polls, how happy will BC voters be about traipsing off to vote in a federal election within a few weeks? I don't know.
If there was one that you thought was more, not necessary, but I don't have a better. Sorry?
More likely?
No. If there was one that was more pressing, like if one of them had to do it and one of them didn't have to do it, which, provincially or federally, which one do you feel is more pressing to do?
I think probably the federal, and my reasoning would be we're going to have another provincial election here in BC in October next year anyway. So within, you know, in a year or so, we're going to be able to go to the polls. We'll have a lot more idea about COVID-19 and where things are going by then. Federally, you know, we have had the WE scandal blow up since the last election in October of last year. The Conservatives now have a new leader. Aaron O'Toole won the leadership 2 or 3 weeks ago, so they've got a bright, shiny new leader. There are lots more questions about Mr. Trudeau. So and of course the next election isn't scheduled for another 3 years or so. So I'd say probably if I had to say one was more necessary, big air quotes here, I'd say probably federally, to give Canadians a chance with fresh information, if you will, that's come in to cast their ballot again. I'd say the federal election. The one that's more likely, I think, is provincial. Don't hold me to any of this. As I said, I am not a betting person, and you might find out why I'm not a betting person in a few weeks when everything I've said I think will happen fails to happen. So,
I appreciate your candor on that. All right, so things happening in the province. People in British Columbia will soon have more options to get quality team-based health care closer to home. About 660 new full-time equivalent healthcare professionals will be part of 22 primary care networks coming soon throughout the province. That's on top of the 17 networks already announced. Over the coming years, these new networks will help connect about 300,000 people to a local primary care team or provider while providing team-paced and culturally safe care. Daily health, so that's one story.
And just if I can just jump in there,
Yeah.
primary care networks, it's really interesting because we talked about Dr. Akinkunmi and signing up patients to him as a physician. I lived in England 30 years ago. I moved there, more than 30 years ago. And I lived in a small town in Wales, and it had a population of, at that time, just over 2,000. So a little bit bigger than Ashcroft. And there was a medical clinic in the village I lived in. And so that's where I went to get my prescriptions. I needed to get a tetanus shot at one. Well, I actually didn't need one. I think maybe the doctor was getting paid by the tetanus shot. Because, yeah, when was your last tetanus shot? Oh, I can't even remember. Oh, well, if you can't remember, then you probably need a new one. You know, you drop your trousers. I'm like, what? Are you getting paid per shot here? But when I went to that clinic, I could have asked to see Dr. Smith if I really liked Dr. Smith, or maybe I had really complex medical issues that Dr. Smith was completely, up to date with and knew all the ins and outs. Generally, if I went there, I just needed a prescription renewed or something very minor. And so I would get an appointment in a really timely manner, sometimes that afternoon or the next morning. But I didn't know which doctor I was going to see.
Right.
All the doctors in the clinic, and I think there might have been 4 or 5, all of them had access to my records. So they could all, know who I was. I didn't walk in and they went, oh, hi, Mrs. Wilson. No, I'm not Mrs. Wilson. So the thing that mattered to me was I got to see a doctor fairly quickly. I didn't really mind who I saw. And something with patient care networks that you switch to is that model, where unless you desperately want to see Dr. Smith, most people just want to get in to see the doctor because they need a dressing changed or they need a prescription filled or what have you. So anyone can do that, and it really expedites things, and it does help with the need for doctors at the current moment to get a certain number of patients attached to them.
Right. Daily health checks help make sure nobody comes to school sick. Before sending a child to school, parents or guardians must assess their child for symptoms of illness, like fever, chills, cough, a runny nose, or sore throat. All school staff must do a daily self-assessment before going to school. If a student or staff has any symptoms, they must stay home. And an up-to-date list of symptoms is available at thebccdc.ca. Extra health and safety measures like hand washing, learning groups, masks, daily health checks, and increased cleaning will reduce the spread of COVID-19 and help keep schools safe. And of course, as I mentioned before, there is a list of schools and where current COVID cases have happened, and that is on the same link. COVID numbers over the last weekend. So we didn't talk about COVID on Tuesday's show. So the COVID numbers over the weekend, we had 317 new cases from Friday to Monday. Over Monday to Tuesday was 93 new cases. Tuesday to Wednesday was 122 new cases. So we're averaging at least 105 new cases a day. Thoughts, queries, concerns about the rising number of COVID cases?
I guess it's good that we are kind of staying in that 93 to 115 kind of range for the most part. I think COVID complacency is a thing. Yeah, it's going to be interesting going now into the cooler weather. Dr. Henry's been saying bigger spaces, fewer faces, and that's fine when it's nice, clear, sunny weather. The temperatures are 28, 30, 32 degrees, and the sun doesn't set till 8 o'clock at night. Well, now, we were the Canadian hotspot on Wednesday this week, 27.3 here in Ashcroft. So that was the hotspot, 27. And it's really cooling down at nights now. The leaves are starting to change. So that whole getting outside and doing things outside and being safer, pretty soon that's going to be a thing of the past for everywhere in the province. So as we go more indoors and you're, not getting that fresh air, you're not having that option to spread out outdoors, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to those COVID numbers. Do they stay fairly level, which they have, or are we going to suddenly start seeing huge spikes?
With your mayor hat on, have you gotten any concerns from local citizens about the rise in numbers?
I haven't heard anything about the rise of numbers. Early on in the pandemic, I did have someone say, was there any way we could cut off the highways and not let people, this is a true thing, not let people into Ashcroft without showing identification. And I said, well, no, we can't do that, actually.
That being said, there were places up and down the Fraser Canyon that did do that, but I just wanted to interject there.
That was before. That was when local municipalities could still declare a local state of emergency, and so several communities did declare local states of emergency. And then the government, the province, came out and said, "No, we cannot have, like for example, traveling up the Fraser Canyon. Well, you could have a situation where Hope is open, and then Yale is not, and Boston Bar is not, but Lytton is, but Ashcroft isn't, but Cache Creek isn't, and you know, you don't know from community to community. Can I gas up here? Can I go in the community? Can I stop and get food? What's the deal?" And so the government province said, no, you can't do this anymore. There have been a few isolated instances. First Nations communities on the coast, for example, Haida Gwaii, was able to institute a ban on travel in and out of the community, but that's because they had an outbreak.
Right.
Just to try and do something preemptively, no. I get the odd comment about people not wearing masks or people feeling that too many people are clustering in one place, but for the most part, I think people in this area, Ashcroft, Cache Creek, Clinton, have been pretty good about obeying the rules and keeping safe, trying to stay safe, still limiting their trips out if you don't have to go. Again, is your journey really necessary? I think a lot of people are still keeping to that mentality, even though the worst of the initial part of the pandemic has ended. I mean, in the early days, it was, if you don't have to go out, stay home, almost like a shelter-in-place thing. And a lot of people have, let that ease a little bit, but they're still, do I really need to go to the grocery store today just to get one thing? Or can I wait till the weekend and do a big shop?
Thank you for that. Okay, so we're just going to quickly go through what's been going on Facebook with our political groups here. And then I think we're pretty much done for the day here.
Done like dinner.
So the Green Party of Canada says, we've heard the government is considering a GLI, which will be included in the throne speech. Greens know the time has come for GLI. It's not a partisan issue, it's an equality issue. To learn more about GLI, join Paul Manley and a panel of experts as they answer common questions and concerns about basic income. Register for the free event to hear from champions of basic income and Canadians who have benefited firsthand from GLI. What does GLI stand for? Guaranteed Livable Income. I've heard Universal Basic Income as a term, but I haven't heard GLI yet. So that's happening September 17th. That is last night, unfortunately, but that is the last thing on the Green Party's Facebook page. But a guaranteed livable income might be an interesting election or position. As for the Liberal Party, our families beginning a school year like no other, the Liberal government has your back with virtual investments in safe return to class for students and teachers, in affordable and quality childcare, and an increased support with the hashtag Canada Child Benefit. The picture says investing in Canadian families as communities get back on their feet. So that is what the last thing on the Liberal Party of Canada's Facebook page says. As for the NDP, they have not changed anything since Tuesday. The last thing of significance, of course, is they're talking about a quote from Jack Layton, which says, "We can be a better, fair, more equal country by working together. Don't let them tell you it can't be done." Jack Layton, who, of course, passed away in 2011 to cancer. I think that if there was a guy that could take NDP to leadership, it could have been Jack.
It could have been Jack. You throw around the phrase, the best prime minister that Canada never had. And I think that if you're in that discussion, then Jack Layton is certainly up in the top 5, top 3, top 1. I don't know. He took the NDP closer federally to power than they have ever been. And if he had been able to lead them into the next election, you know, this is one of the things I find so fascinating about federal and provincial politics, is because there are so many what ifs. The road not taken. If Jack Layton had led the NDP into another election, instead of Canada politics-wise going this way, we could have gone that way. And I know that's right, not left, but I'm just trying to make a point here about roads. So there are so many things that if one thing had been different, the whole country could have been on a completely different path. And I think Jack Layton had the potential to do that for Canada. And we'll never know.
On the Conservative page is just a picture of their new leader, Erin O'Toole, and the quote says, "We are here to fight for you, and I am asking you to take a look at the Conservative Party of Canada." And there's just a picture of Erin O'Toole, leader of the Canada's Conservatives and the official opposition. As for local politics, for Brad Viss, our local MP, he has a picture of a lady with a backpack, and it says, "It is a pleasure to share these TELUS days of giving kits for kids' backpacks with the children in need at Boston Bar Elementary and Secondary School. The backpacks are safely packed with school supplies, including a ruler, eraser, exercise books, paper, pencils, pens, pencil crayons, and 2 COVID-19 safety masks." He continues to say that I want to give a shout out to Principal Lisa Oki, the staff and children at Boston Bar Elementary / Secondary School and other schools across the riding. So that is what is going on Brad Viss's Facebook page. And as I was starting to read before, Jackie Taggart says, "With signs of an election being imminent and many changes taking place, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to my colleagues who have entrusted me to be their caucus chair for the last several years, a position I was honored to hold. Congratulations to Greg J. Kylo, who has been unanimously elected to the position. I know that he will be excellent." So that is from Jackie Taggart. So that's what's going on with our political groups and our political people. So that's all that I really have for today. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think Terry Fox Run coming up on Sunday, September 20th. Get out there, walk around your neighborhood, make a donation, collect some pledges, have fun, enjoy. We're supposed to have less smoky skies by the weekend, so that'll be great. So it'll be a beautiful fall day in our region.
Do we have the actual events video? No? Well, we're going to add that in, I think. We can put that in here. Yeah. Oh, never mind. Barbara, give me a name. Somebody around town.
Give you a name. Angela and Ryan Gothic.
Angela and Ryan Gothic. If you're watching wherever you are, we hope that you're doing well. Thank you all so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you all on Tuesday.